with the scent of potpourri, the films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer, a weekly podcast reviewing 2 new or recent release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find more of my work, including my written reviews, full episode show notes, and the complete backlog of our episodes and spin-off podcasts at obsessiveviewer.com. You can also follow me on Letterboxd and other social media platforms at the username of Obsessive Viewer. And if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes and recordings, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where I have immediate movie reaction reviews, TV show episode reviews, book reviews, audio test recordings of my stupid voice, and some commentary tracks, a whole plethora of things on Patreon. Recently, I did a franchise retrospective on Final Destination 1 through 5 in the lead up to Bloodlines. So that is up on Patreon. And I also did a reflective thing on a special episode on me seeing 28 Days Later in the theater again last month. So all that and more is available at Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And if you want to support me without messing with Patreon or just do like a quick donation, you can always buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/obsessiveviewer. And with that out of the way, this week on the show, I'll be reviewing the new Julianne Moore and Sydney Sweeney movie on Apple TV Plus, Echo Valley, in this week's secondary review. But before that, we're going to go over some movie news and Indianapolis screenings before reviewing the DreamWorks' new live-action remake, How to Train Your Dragon, in this week's feature review. And joining me once again on the podcast, making his triumphant return, is my friend and IFJA colleague, whose work can be found at MidwestFilmJournal.com, and he can also be followed on Letterboxd at the handle of Joe R. Shearer. It's, spoiler alert, Joe Shearer. Joe, welcome back to the show. How's it going?
It is going well. Yeah, it's been a busy time, and I've not been on much lately. I'm very glad to be back. I've been wanting to for quite a while.
Nice. Well, I'm glad to have you back, man. And I don't begrudge you any of the busyness because I know your life is hectic. And yeah, I've been busy myself. Like I've let some weeks go where I don't do an episode, and that's felt weird. But
yes,
I'm back at it, and I promise everyone it'll be fine. Oh, is this your first episode this year?
My first of the year, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I was after the run, the IFJA end of year run, I was like, I'm taking a break for a while. And
yeah.
I kind of took January off and caught up on series and things like that. And that ended up becoming I don't want to say a couple of months, but I didn't really jump back into things for about a month and a half or so. And then had kind of a little run and then a little bit of a break the last couple of weeks. But
nice.
Yeah, it is definitely time to jump back in and, get out there and start shouting about the things that I like and don't like.
Nice. Well, I am so glad to have you back here. Yeah, and as far as stuff you've done recently, over at Midwest Film Journal, I saw that you did reviews of The Surfer, Fight or Flight, and the movie we're going to be reviewing here shortly, How to Train Your Dragon. So how are things going over on the writing side when it comes to like Midwest Film Journal and anywhere else you're throwing your name out there?
Yeah, it's been pretty great. You mentioned those last couple of movies. That's my last one had been back in early May, and that was when my second break kind of started there. But I did a lot of kind of fun things. Got to see a couple of interesting movies, and did a couple of retrospective things. If you have ever been there, I know you have, Matt, obviously, but if you've ever visited Midwest Film Journal, they love to do kind of retrospectives on the career of different actors and filmmakers. And they did one on Robert Downey Jr. and I contributed a couple of pieces to that. and then there's the one upcoming on. I believe they're working on Angelina Jolie this time, and I haven't done any. I didn't do any for that one, but Willem Dafoe is coming next, and I've got 3 coming up for that. So
that's so awesome.
Check that out. Willem Dafoe is a lot of fun. He's had a great career and a lot of very different kinds of movies. So I'm doing a couple of things, and I don't know if I want to like spoil the titles, but I'll say
right.
There's a mainstream political thriller. There's what I'd call sort of an indie dark comedy, almost horror film from the 2000s, and then a racial drama from the late 80s. So 3 very different movies. With a very key connecting point, and that's Willem Dafoe. So
nice.
Didn't get to do some of the other fun ones, but you have to have a
sure.
At some point, you have to stop and let other people do stuff. So I was just like, and other people took the good ones before I got to them.
Sure.
I'm doing these other good ones instead.
Nice. All I'll say is that the readers of Midwest Film Journal are going to be burning with anticipation for your pieces there.
They'll be burning in anticipation.
Yes, that they may not be in the shadow of other ones or something. And
right.
I forgot what the third one was, honestly. So, but yeah. Well, anyway,
it could become clear and present to you.
That's right. Point. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Damn it.
There are 3 movies I love for different reasons. But also the same reason. This particular actor we're writing about is part of it. But but it's fun. 3 different roles for him that almost couldn't be more different in some ways, but they're all equally entertaining. So
nice.
You can go check those out. I would encourage you to go back and look at some of those other ones, the Robert Downey Jr. ones especially. I did Back to School, which is I would dare say the most low key of any of the roles that they covered for that series, except maybe for the other one I did, which is Chef, where he had a single scene, and but it was and almost what felt like a throwaway, but ended up really being kind of pivotal to the film, and it was but yeah, it's very fun. I had a great time writing them, I'll say that at least. Nice. So hopefully anyone who will read them will have the amount of fun reading that I did writing them.
Perfect. Well, links to all of Joe's work is in the show notes of this episode not again, because I haven't said it yet, but those show notes are available in your podcast app that you're listening to this on, in the description if you're like looking at or listening to it on YouTube, since I don't really do video on YouTube. But anyway, and it is also, the show notes are also available at obsessiveviewer.com/OV479. So Joe, do you mind if I run down a couple of things, really just one thing really, because I didn't really do my due diligence, but of things happening in Indianapolis in the film sphere this coming weekend or this week?
Yeah. I'd love to hear it.
Awesome. So as is the norm for these episodes here, I do want to mention once again that the Alamo Draft House on Lafayette Road, they are having movie trivia on Sunday. It's the first and third Sunday of the month, so this Sunday is going to be that. So check that out. It's free to participate, and you can order food and stuff and all that. So definitely check that out. It's hosted by our friend and colleague Lou Harry. So definitely check that out over at the Alamo and support the Alamo Draft House, because it's a really good theater. I like it a lot.
Lou has been around a long time.
Yes.
I actually it was a great thrill to meet him, because he was pretty established when I was coming up.
Oh yeah.
And it was it's a good time talking to him. He's someone who's extraordinarily intelligent and is a terrific writer, and has he has a let's say he has a singular take on on cinema and on plays and musicals as well. He's a big theater person, and it doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, is a pretty accomplished playwright. He's a very talented person, and I'm actually trying to get to one of those, the Alamo Draft House.
Me
in
too.
Indianapolis. It's pretty close to my house. Yeah,
Nice.
and I've been kind of dying. And my fiance also is a bit of a trivia buff, and so I've been trying to get over there. It's just that with children and things, the first and third Sundays have been difficult. I'm gonna have to get him to switch so that we can come every time.
Right.
You like switch those weeks out. No, I'm actually my ex-wife isn't listening to this podcast, so I can probably just like speak freely to this, that I'm actually trying to shift my weekends. And I think a side effect of that would be that I would be able to go to those. I'm not doing that because of the trivia. How silly would that be? But no, we're actually trying to match up our respective children's weekend schedules with each other so that they'll all be together, and then we will have child-free weekends on a regular basis, which is a fun time too.
Oh, that'll be nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So if that happens, we'll be in good shape, and we can become regulars there. So and the Alamo Draft House is a fun place over there. They got
it's so much fun.
Yeah, they got a great racing theme, for the building, and of course it's very close to Speedway and to the famous Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So it was kind of a nice building in there, and of course their cell phone policy is kind of sets them apart, I think.
Yes,
which one wouldn't really think would be a selling point, but it is.
Right.
It's kind of like they don't tolerate scum.
Yeah, exactly. And you love to see it. Like it's just I want to start going there more regularly, specifically because I want to see it happen. I want to see it happen and just get that Schadenfreude. Well, there was a not too far from Speedway, and my house was a thing in the news today. A little bit of a skirmish at a Texas Roadhouse in Avon. Yes, I saw the videos and everything. So, Jesus.
Hopefully that won't happen. Check your reels if you're not familiar. Check out this Texas Roadhouse fight. It was it's something to see. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of something to see, though, the elsewhere in Indianapolis at the Can on Father's Day, June 15th, the Can is having a VHS screening of The Big Lebowski. So that's exciting. And on the 17th, they're showing The Birdcage. So that's cool. And then I'll go ahead and just say over at Keystone Art in my backyard, this coming Tuesday for their retro replay, their Pride Month retro replay, Tuesday is going to be The Kids Are All Right. And they did just announce their July lineup for the retro replay. It's going to be a comedy-centric one. So in July, on Tuesdays, they're going to be showing Animal House, The Jerk, Billy Madison, and The Big Lebowski. So
nice. The Jerk is a lot of. I mean, all of those are fun movies. The Jerk is one that early Steve Martin, but I don't know. There would have to be some script changes if they try to make that movie today.
I am very curious if and when Gen Z gets their hands on The Jerk, because it is. I mean, it's like that, and like obviously, oh my God, why can't I? Blazing Saddles are two big ones for the for Gen Z and Gen Alpha. The last two generations of humanity. So
back when they made good movies. I mean, listen, those were certainly good movies. They reflect the values of the time.
Yes.
And it was, I mean, and I wouldn't even, I mean, it's not necessarily even like, how do I say it? Like, it's not necessarily like racist, but it certainly dances up to the line of, being insensitive in a modern context. So,
absolutely. Like not to
your discretion is advised for sure.
Yes. And not to like get on like a tangent or anything. Welcome to the Obsessive Viewer, but not to get on a tangent, but like, I feel like I made the joke about, Gen Z getting their hands on that. Like, I feel like there is such an epidemic, if you will, of just a lack of media literacy. So like, I mean, Blazing Saddles is making fun of racism. Like it's like, it's really aggravating when it gets to the point where people get outraged because of something, just because of what it is, without digging deeper into why it's being presented the way it is.
It was. Blazing Saddles was a very forward thinking film. I don't know if I want to say the jerk necessarily is
right,
but they're in a lot of ways doing the same thing. And it's shining a light up to racism Blazing Saddles especially is I would call a classic for that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And because and honestly, more modern things like Quentin Tarantino films are do kind of the same thing where with even less, if I say tact, involved, that he's certainly come under criticism for the type of language he's used in his films,
right?
And this is Blazing Saddles falls into that category, but I would argue it's maybe a little more it's a little more culturally sensitive, not sensitive, but it certainly has that in mind. It has racism in mind when it's using the things, and it presents the racist people as buffoons in ways that they certainly deserve. So it's outlandish, for both for its time and for today, but it's a film people should watch and appreciate for what it is, for what it says, and not what it says.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
That perfectly said. So moving on to wrap up the what's playing in Indy, over at Flicks Brewhouse, which is also somewhat in my backyard, they are showing on June 17th. They're showing But I'm a Cheerleader, which I just saw a few months ago for the first time and loved it. And then I also just saw, this is exciting, on July 8th, they're showing Scream, the original. So
nice.
Might need to make a trip out there. But links to all of these theaters and everything can be found in the show notes of the episode. Joe, how would you feel about going into news before the reviews? I have 2 news items to kind of riff on for a second, if you don't mind.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Alrighty, so before we get to our review, obviously we're going to do news before the reviews. Like I said, I have 2 news items. The first one is something that kind of just was under the radar for me because I was just browsing and I didn't even know that this was announced. But it'll be brief. But basically, the Mass Effect TV adaptation on Amazon Prime or through Amazon Studios has found a showrunner. So Doug Young is going to be the showrunner for the TV series adaptation, which he previously worked on the Chief something. I can't remember what it was, and I'm trying to discreet. There we go. The Chief of War. He's recently served as executive producer and showrunner on Apple TV Plus's upcoming series, The Chief of War, which premieres August 1st. And his series credits also include Mindhunter, Banshee, and Big Love. And he also co-wrote Star Trek Beyond. So I'm just excited that there's news about the Mass Effect TV show because I am a huge fan of that entire video game universe. The Mass Effect universe, I think, is brilliant, and I want to see it adapted because it is so cinematic. Joe, have you ever played the Mass Effect games? Any interest in them? Like, how do you feel about this news?
I have never played those games. I have heard of them, of course. I know they're pretty popular, but I have never. I have. Once I became a father, I sort of became much less of a gamer. And
you put away childish things.
well, let's not get crazy. But no, I did have to, like, something had to go.
Yeah.
And the Elder Scrolls sort of ruled my life for a couple of years, and I sought help, and I had to leave my family for rehab for a couple of months, but yeah. So
I hope you're not serious about that, because I just laughed.
No, not at all. But I did play Oblivion and then Skyrim, and spent hours upon hours. And when I found myself waking up at 1 a.m. with a controller in my hand and me fighting someone, I kind of realized I needed to take a step back, and I kind of just stopped. And now I just play really sad games on my phone. And it's not great, but it kind of sustains me just enough.
Nice.
And then and now I've become that guy who's like, oh, back in my day we had 2 buttons on our controller, and like, my son. So I have this thing I run across on my my Facebook memories every year, where we were at Walmart, and they had the 8-bit Mario on the T-shirt.
Oh,
and my son looking at it, who was about, I don't know, 7 or 8 at the time, he was like, "Look, Dad, it's Minecraft Mario." And I was like, "That is not Minecraft Mario.
No.
That is Mario." It's like, that's OG
awesome.
Mario, buddy. Yeah. So I find that every year and smile at it. But yeah, I'm that old guy now, and yeah, but I have just enough. And my oldest son now is an adult and still games, but I'm much less connected with what games he plays. But my younger son doesn't play. He plays mostly car-based games now, the racing games. And he showed me this one, and he was just like driving around a town, like it wasn't even like a race kind of thing. He's just like, I'm like, what is happening? Like, what has happened to the world? Like, you're just like this is the most mundane thing in the world. You're just driving around. He's like, oh, I know, it's fun. And I'm like, well, okay. I was always like, what's happening to the world? Like, we're all watching videos of other people playing video games, and then we're playing video games where we're just doing like the saddest things we can do. It's like when they're going to come out with a game of like called Dinner Time, and it's like we're just sitting here choosing what to cook, and then we cook it, and now we're eating it.
I bet that exists. I feel like that does exist in some form or the other. Yeah. Yep. Like, the simulator games are weird.
Yeah. Then the sequel is Bedtime, and it's like, yes, we are going to sleep. Now what are we doing? We're still sleeping.
Hit X to get the REM cycle going.
Right. Yeah. But, no, but there are, it's obviously the YouTube gamer community and stuff. It is what it is, but it can be very obnoxious. But I do certainly wish I had those sorts of walkthroughs and things back when we were playing Metal Gear. And,
oh my God, Metal Gear.
I don't want to say when I was playing things like Metal Gear and Castlevania and whatever. These games that I found hard.
Metal Gear was such a great one for that. Like, because there was that part in the game where you had to have the actual like insert for the disc to get a code for the codex thing, and so if you like rented it from Blockbuster, you were screwed.
Right.
So good.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I'm now out of my depth officially. It's made me old. And as I said that earlier, I'm officially old as today. I'm for the first time wearing my Indiana dad shirt that my daughter got me as she continues to prepare to start her college journey. So I'm now wearing the dad shirt, and that's so I'm gonna go get a walker, and I'm gonna just go with it and just have to accept it. So
start making those old man noises whenever you move and move around.
I was like, and then I already grunt every time I stand up. I'm like, my fiance is like, did that hurt? And I'm like, it really didn't. I don't know why I did it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And yeah, officially on the record, congratulations for you and your daughter.
She graduated high school, and her show choir career has ended, and now she gets to start the next part of her journey. So it'll be it's been wonderful to see, and we actually did have the party yesterday. So and I was basically on my feet and walking up and down flights of stairs for about 9 hours. So again, I am sore today, as an old person would be.
Yes. I know exactly how that feels. Yeah.
No, you don't.
No, I really don't. I was just trying to.
Not you think you do, but
I'm an old man at heart.
40, yeah, when you hit 40, you'll kind of be like, oh yeah, that's what this is like.
Well, I am just over 1 year away from that, so that's my yeah. So I got to live it up for the next 13 months. No, 12 months and like 2 weeks. So before
hopefully time slows down a little bit. Well, no.
I hope so.
We don't. Well, yeah, but also we don't want that.
Yeah, that's right.
Other things that we need to move past.
Right.
Real fast. But anyway. Just enjoy it while you have it. Enjoy the moments.
I am doing my best, and I am enjoying it the best way I can, which is talking to you about movies on the podcast. So definitely good. The other news item that I have is that, and I don't have much to really say about it, but Mia Goth joins Ryan Gosling in Star Wars Starfighter. And Joe, how do you feel about the Star Wars universe right now? Like, do you have any interest in this? The movie is going to shoot this fall and is set to open on May 28th, 2027. Sean Levy is directing. It's the first movie, the first feature film after Episode 9 from like 2019, I think. Yeah. How do you feel?
I don't know. It's that's I gotta have just like that little gasp there. I have mostly liked the TV series that I've seen. I have not watched all of them. I started watching the Acolyte recently, and I've been pretty into it. I haven't seen either season of Andor, but of course I love The Mandalorian. I like the Book of Boba Fett. I know that it was, it is what it is, but it was still okay. And I like the Star Wars universe. I am a bit of a Star Trek person.
Sure.
So I have that, and I am even behind on some of those series a little bit, but I don't know. When you start getting people like Sean Levy directing it, it's like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. Let's just wait and see. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling is fun, but this is like very mainstream. Mia Goth has become pretty big over the last couple of years, and it's like, let's see. I'll go into it with an open mind, but who can say? It certainly isn't George Lucas's baby anymore, and that's for better or worse. I mean, he, as far as my opinion is on that, is that the prequels were just mostly hot garbage, even though they were still pretty cool in some ways. They were terrible films. In a lot of ways, the writing was not great. The acting was pretty bad, but cool lightsaber fights still. Still things. I mean, it's still Star Wars, so that's hopefully that continues. I've always thought that the spaceship battles were the lesser of the aspects of Star Wars that I liked. I mean, I liked them, but are we going to have lightsabers also? Can't we just have both?
Right.
But I want lightsabers, but we have had a lot of that. So I do think expanding a universe like that is something that Star Wars in a lot of ways pioneered. Between Star Wars and Star Trek, they're kind of pioneered those kinds of kind of ongoing things. So that's that is certainly something I like. I've always thought that kind of stuff. Like since I was a kid, it's just like, why don't we just have a movie about some random person where the empire is like off on the, like off in the distance, and there's just like other things happening. Like what else is it's a giant universe, and there's like millions of, thousands of species. Like, why aren't we talking about some of these other species and finding good stories to tell about them? So hopefully that's what they're doing. But that certainly has been what they've done a little bit so far. They're keeping it close enough to those original narratives that it's still familiar. But that's kind of one of the things I liked about the Acolyte is plenty of lightsabers, plenty of Jedi kind of things happening that is not Skywalker centric, but but it still touches it just enough to remind us. So it's like let's keep doing that kind of stuff. And again, I haven't seen the end of the first season of The Acolyte, so if something really horrible happens, like don't tell me how I'm supporting trash or something, because I haven't gotten there. But what I've seen in the first couple episodes, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of fun. Nice. So maybe if it's really terrible at the end, we can I'll come back on and be like, oh yeah, I was wrong about that.
I will hold you to that. I watched the first episode of The Acolyte just because, like, obviously me and Star Wars, I'm not a big fan or anything, but like, I was interested in the idea of kind of just starting in like the chronological timeline of the universe. Like The Acolyte being the first thing, I was like, maybe I'll just watch it and like not make a whole project of it or anything, but just be like, maybe I'll watch it and then eventually I'll get through like as much as I can, as it'll hold my attention throughout the whole chronology of Star Wars. I watched one episode and just didn't go back to it.
Yeah, I mean that is a thing too that you can do. But I will say it's probably been talked to death, but that for those people back and back when it was just movies. I have always said, because people, after the prequels came out, people were like, "Oh, well, the right way to watch them is episode 1, 2, 3." Then, like from the start. And it's like, if you watch the first 3 films before you watch them in the release order, you don't get the reveal of Darth Vader. Not that everybody knows who Darth Vader is now. But if you are someone watching it for the first time, like that ruins that surprise. Like it spoils itself.
Right.
So it's like, go ahead and do that on your second or third viewing, but don't do it on the first one.
Right.
That's not, if you're introducing your children to it, like don't ruin that. Like give them that because it kind of also then it's like, why are this brother and sister making out with each other? It's like, that's bizarre.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I've Star Wars Starfighter, sure, we'll see what happens in 2027, assuming that it gets made, because it seems like every few years they're just like, hey, we're going to do this movie or this project, and then it's like, well, maybe not, let's do this instead. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Fingers crossed that it's good.
Yes. Oh yeah. But that is it for news before the reviews. Joe, would you like to go into our review of How to Train Your Dragon?
We may as well. That's why we're here.
Alrighty, perfect. Well, we are going to go ahead and go into our review of How to Train Your Dragon, the new live-action remake from DreamWorks. It is coming out in theaters on June 13th, which hopefully you'll be getting this episode that day. Or the day before. No, yeah, the 12th. Anyway, it's going to be in theaters June 13th. Of course, we're going to do a non-spoiler review, and then we'll go into spoilers as needed. I'll play a clip from the trailer to transition us over to spoilers, but you can check the show notes for timestamps to navigate around it. So, How to Train Your Dragon. The premise, according to IMDb, is as an ancient threat endangers both Vikings and dragons alike on the Isle of Berk, the friendship between Hiccup, an inventive Viking, and Toothless, a Night Fury dragon, becomes the key to both species forming a new future together. The movie was written and directed by Dean Dubois. And the cast includes Mason Thames, Nico Parker, Gerard Butler, Nick Frost, Gabriel Howell, Julian Dennison, Bronwyn James, Harry Trevelyan, Murray MacArthur, and Peter Serafinowicz. So, non-spoilers for How to Train Your Dragon. Joe, how did you feel about this movie, and how did you feel about the, I guess, trilogy of animated films that exist?
Yeah. I was pretty conflicted about this, and of course, you and I saw this at the same screening and talked a little bit about it. But
yeah,
the original film, the animated film, came out with 2010. That is 15 years ago now. But and there is a kind of a new generation of moviegoers. And with a remake like this, it's especially a live action remake of a kind of a classic animated film. And this is what I write about a lot. What I wrote about kind of was my focus in my review, which will be out. It's probably by the time you are listening to this, it should be out. Yeah,
it's out now, actually.
Oh, it is. Okay. Yep. Okay, it's out. It has run. I better go collect the link for it. But the question I was kind of asking myself as this started was, is there a reason for this to exist? If a lot of the Disney remakes, they've done a lot of them lately. They've done, obviously Dumbo, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Jungle Book, just, kind of one after the other. And the question is always like, why are they doing this? Is this like, oh, we're going to make a live action version so we can make more money off the property? Do they have something more to say? I will say, like, for example, the Beauty and the Beast adaptation had a little bit of something extra. They added a little bit of gayness into that in a way that I enjoyed. And if you can bring something new to the table while you're retelling the same story, then it's great. But for me, something like the Jungle Book and the Lion King, I was like, I saw those movies and there they go. It was like I felt like I'd seen them before. When they're using CGI to such an effect, so heavily, it's almost like it's animated still. It's just animated in a different way. It's just visually a little bit different. And that certainly is the case for this film. To some degree, there's a lot of computer animation, but it's a little bit different, in this case. So I think it works as a live action film, and I think what it brings differently is a little more realism, if that's the word to use, when it comes to the flying scenes with Hiccup and Toothless, and then of course the other dragons and their other people riding them. Listen, this is pretty faithful to the original. It's a relatively straight remake, I think, but they kind of passed up, I think, an opportunity to make this film scarier than the original. They're still marketing this to kids, and I think that's probably the right call to make. But that was something I thought when I first saw the first dragon in this film. I was like, man, this could be really scary. Like if they wanted to, they could ratchet up that tension a little bit in the kind of the horror of a dragon. And they didn't do that. So, if you're a parent listening to this, don't worry. You should be able to take your kid to this just the same. There might be a moment or two if your kid's younger. I had one of my fiance's kids with me, and her younger son climbed up into my lap about 2/3 of the way through the movie, which is kind of his sign of, this is maybe a little bit scary. So it was a little bit, there's a little bit of here and there, but it still is pretty straight and straightforward. I think the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless, I think it works better a little bit than it did in the original, which is saying a lot, because in the original, that was really great, but it did feel a little more real to me in this, and I think it must just be the live action component. But it worked. It just worked for me. The first couple flying sequences did have that kind of awe-inspiring feel to it where you're just like, oh wow, this is very cool.
Mhm.
But it's a little bit hit or miss. So I'll kind of stop there for my my initial comments and let you say something, and maybe like get the conversation under control. But my answer is yeah, I liked it. It both is pretty accurate and faithful to the original. It doesn't do things much differently, but it does some of the things a little bit better than the animated version. Just speaking of the first film.
That's interesting. And because I had a similar reaction to it, mostly just that the things that I liked about this movie are basically the things that I liked about the original movie. And I too, as everyone will, struggled with the thought of like, does it need to be live action? Does this need to exist? Is this justifying itself? And for the most part, yeah, it's fine. It's good. It's in terms of the thrills of like seeing this dragon stuff in live action is really interesting. Although, like, Toothless like just looks. I mean, like the CGI looks great, but it also looks like it is fanciful. It's not like photorealistic really. But I do want to say that I was a little bit not annoyed, but I was a little bit like when your fiance's son got on your lap, I was like, I was going to do that because I was scared too. So I just had to sit there and just take it.
He's like, "Beat it, kid."
Yeah. For those listening, Joe and I sat next to each other at the screening.
Yes.
Anyway, so, but
I
yeah,
held his hand instead. So that,
yes.
yeah.
Very, very. I'm sorry for all the sweat. So, but to your point though about it not being like scary in terms of the jump from animation to live action, I will say that opening sequence, I had like this moment where as it was going on, because like the movie starts with a dragon attack on Burke, and it's under cover of night, it's dark, it's scary, we're getting fed all of this exposition, which is it worked better in the animated version. I would say this was just playing a lot of catch up in terms of what the deal is while we're in this huge set piece. I think doing it in live action kind of makes it seem like too much of a vessel of exposition and not like a joining together of story and set piece. But I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But I was kind of conflicted because I was like, okay, well, we're not seeing much of the dragons because it's nighttime, it's cover of night. And like, I was thinking it's really, really dark. Like it's really dark, presumably because they also shot it for 3D or converted it for 3D. So probably adds a little bit of a darker tint to the finished product. We saw it in 2D, but the actual like effects work, the fire, the destruction, I was like, this is pretty scary. Like in terms of live action, I could see that being a frightening thing for kids to see, compared to seeing an animated version of it. Is like there's that not disconnect from reality, but that kind of just separation from reality that animation gives, that I think having a live action version of it is towing the line of being kind of scary. And as an adult, I enjoyed it. Like I thought that was good, but I'm curious how kids feel about it.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing about this kind of a movie, is that you're dealing with something that is potentially scary, and I think they make up for it by not really changing the designs of the dragons that much.
Yeah.
They're pretty similar. You got the big, like the fat bumblebee kind of dragon, and then there's the one with the long snout. It's almost like a crocodile, but it's like got the funny teeth. It's got kind of an underbite. So it's kind of like they sort of look silly from time to time. But especially the training sequences, there still is a little element of danger. Although they never really go they don't go as far as they could. And
Yeah.
there's still some situations where you're like, oh, I mean, if a dragon really like shot its fire breath at you, like wouldn't that person have still roasted alive,
Right.
hiding behind that wooden, like divider thing? It's like, you're like, yeah, but it's like you have to kind of suspend disbelief a little bit more. I mean, not that a gigantic dragon isn't suspension of disbelief enough, but
Right.
it's just like, in this world, does that work?
Right.
Like, it's like, well, you just kind of shrug. You're like, yeah, who really cares?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, those training sequences were really good too. Like I regret not revisiting the original movie in the lead up to the screening, because from what I remember, this is very, like you said, it's very faithful to the original story. And that was one of the, not gripes that I had, or one of the criticisms I had coming out of it. It's like, yeah, I enjoyed this movie, but I also enjoyed it 15 years ago.
Right. Yeah. It's like, I enjoyed the same thing. It's you just aren't getting much new. And
Right.
that would be nice. But something that, and I don't know that it is different from the original. Again, I haven't watched it for many years, but the thing I loved about the original kind of ultimately was the way it embraced the disability. Both of Toothless and then later of Hiccup and of other people. But it sort of, for some reason, it hit home more here that it's not that having a disability was, how do I say this? It normalized disabilities in kind of in a way that I don't know that I've even ever seen in a movie. It normalizes it. It's not only, and again, we're kind of spoiling. Let's just say this: a major character toward the end ends up with a disability that they didn't have when the film started. But I kind of realized that society is defined by disabilities. It was sort of a badge of honor.
Yeah,
that,
like a rite of passage.
And there's, and there's most of the characters. Gobber is like the prime example. He has the trap jaw. If you excuse my 80s He-Man reference, he has kind of a trap jaw kind of thing where he's lost his hand, and so he switches these weapons. He's got like a hammer, he's got an axe, and he's got all of these different things that he just like detaches and reattaches. And depending on what the circumstances dictate, but a lot of the characters, like lots of people, they're missing limbs. They're and they're not looked upon as people who have a disability. It's like you said, it's that rite of passage. It's like you're a real man now because you lost you were injured in battle, and you're adapting to that. And that was not again, like I think that was done in the original too, but it didn't land the way it did in this film for me. And that might be for myself too. That might just be the way I noticed it. But I thought that was that's really admirable. I mean, we want to be careful with that. We don't want to have kids running around like, I'm gonna get my hand chopped off.
Right.
That could be awesome. I think I'm hopeful, that as a society we're past that kind of silliness. But I thought that was pretty cool that a child who has something similar, has some similar affliction. This is kind of like the series of films for them, because there are disabilities everywhere, and it's not just you can still fit in. It's like there's no question that you just fit in. This is not even something for you to be concerned about, in terms of like in relation to everyone else in the world. And and Hiccup at times was kind of like, here I am with all of my stuff intact, and I want to be out there fighting with everybody else. And they're all like, don't worry, kid, you'll get there someday. It's sort of there under the surface. And I thought that was really fun. And of course that, again, as we hinted at, it kind of comes into play later on as even a benefit. Once you kind of are, it's like as a person realizing your potential, and that's where where it comes in this film.
It's kind of an interesting, that's such an interesting thing to hit on too, because I think that I would say one of the reasons why it feels more pronounced in this iteration of the movie is because of live action. Like when you're watching like an animated movie where people are like, oh, you can, you're probably going to lose a limb or something in Battle with Dragons. It's like, okay, it's an animated movie, but like seeing live action, like it underscores that tension of the possibility or probability of having those like battle scars come up throughout a character's lifetime. So that's really interesting. And one of my favorite things about the story of overall, both this version and the original, is that connection between Hiccup and Toothless. Just that, I mean, it plays it up like a pet relationship, and like anyone who has a pet knows exactly how that feels. And it just really plays into that. And I thought that the relationship between the two of them in this movie was done well. I will say that Mason Thames, there's just something about Jay Baruchel's performance in the original, his voice performance, that it's weird to me to see someone else play Hiccup. And that's a fault of my own, but I feel like there's a little bit more emotion in the vocal performance of Jay Baruchel in the original than there was in this one with Mason Thames.
Yeah. I would say for me it's a little bit less, and but I absolutely understand what you're saying, because I remember when I was like, man, Jay Baruchel is headlining this movie. Like, he was still the guy that was in what was it he had been in, Knocked Up or something.
Yeah, Knocked
or
Up.
he did She's Out of Your League or something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, what a weird kind of like movie star, and it took me by surprise, the performance he gave. It was really pretty nuanced, and I think that's, I do think he was fantastic in it, but I mostly like Mason Thames. I would have to get that pronunciation.
Yeah,
him is like the river in England, but us Americans will say Thames. Right. He's Mason Thames, but no, I thought he was good, and he looks like the animated version of Hiccup, and so they did a good job of that, and I think he does fine. I had a few quibbles, and maybe it was just annoying. Maybe it was an annoyance in the flow of the narrative, where he has those moments where he's trying to, basically of course, and if you've seen the original, this, he's fighting between the societal pressure of being a warrior and the internal struggle of who he really is, which is an inventor and a more sensitive type of person. He's not a fighter, and this is really where this story just succeeds so well. It's exciting and has fights and battles, and and I talked about, we talked already about that, kind of normalizing having a disability to such an extent, but it also doesn't glorify the violence of it. There are those moments where he's trying to kill Toothless when he first meets him. He invents a contraption that nets a dragon, and of course hits him and goes and finds him, and he's hurt, and he's gonna kill him and be like, yeah, I'm a big man, and then he just realizes, like, this is not what I want. I don't want to be this person after all. And it really does a great job of setting that up, and I really, is certainly equal to the original. I had I felt like they did a really good job of hammering that home and making that kind of the inciting incident of their relationship. I'm not even really using that term correctly, but that's kind of the genesis of their relationship, is how he just is taking pity on another living creature that's hurt. And that sensitivity is very much frowned upon in his community, but he continues, just kind of the coolest thing about that is he continues to find a way to be a superior warrior to everyone by using his mind and by
Mhm.
also being peaceful and not harming the dragon, but
Yeah.
by interacting with them and learning the things that make them vulnerable and kind of taking advantage of that in a way that doesn't hurt them. And that was, and I don't, and again, it might just be the amount of time since I saw the original, but I thought it was really great the way they did that, where he finds the tickler spot and, he understands like what the tells are before something's about to happen.
Mhm.
And he uses that to outsmart because we go into this like, who's the dragon slayer among these like apprentice students,
Right.
and he is looked upon as the weakest of the people in the town.
Mhm.
And in order for him, but he continues to get a one up on everyone because he's prepared.
Mhm.
And he's not preparing by swinging an axe around. He's observing and watching and
Mhm.
listening. And that was such a great, it's just such a great layered and nuanced kind of story. All of those things are happening at the same time. And it's really pretty fantastic, honestly. But
Yeah, absolutely.
but it's weird. I usually feel like I'm criticizing a movie too much. But I do kind of feel like I'm giving it a lot more praise than I really want. I'm like,
Sure.
It feels like I'm like, if we stop this now, it'd be like 5-star movie.
Right.
I don't really think it's a 5-star movie though.
No.
It's certainly not in the context of the original. I just think
Yeah.
it's a faithful retelling of that really great story that already exists. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that whole sequence, really, the bulk of the middle part of the movie with him excelling at that training stuff and in that competition, like I feel like, and I'll need to revisit the original to kind of confirm, but like I feel like it wasn't necessarily as fleshed out as it could have been. In terms of like world building, because like I said, we had that exposition dump at the beginning of the movie, and like there's a lot of things at play there. I just kind of feel like there was room to expand upon it in terms of like the other characters and like their place in the world, which we get plenty of that, but I just feel like there could have been a little bit more to the kind of three-dimensionalness of that with the society and everything. But now that I'm saying that out loud, I kind of feel like there was plenty of that. Like it was fine.
Well, I will say that the opening narration felt pretty worthless to me.
Yeah.
It was, I heard the opening narration and just rolled my eyes, and I was just like, I mean, again, if we want something a little bit, we do want it the same, but we also want it to be a little bit different. It should be better in some ways. And that felt pretty lazy, honestly.
Yeah. You can kind of get away with it in animation, or like it's better suited to animation. That's one part where I feel like they didn't need to do like copy and paste from the animated version to this. Like they could have done something different. Yeah,
I agree. And if I'm just thinking like, let's just pull that animation or that narration out.
Yeah.
Let's just take it out of the movie and let that scene stand as a fight.
Mm-hmm.
We would have gotten the same point across. Right?
Yeah.
Like it would have, we see him being ineffective. We see his dad and everyone else yelling at him and telling him to get out of the way. We see what he wants to do. We see what he's good at and what he's not good at. And we just don't, and that's essentially what the narration does, is it sets up the world, right? It sets up Burke, and it sets up the dragons, and it sets up, everything that, that's about to happen, and gives us that context. But if we didn't have that, would the movie have been worse off? And I think the answer is no. The movie would have largely been the same. We wouldn't have lost anything having that narration not be there.
Exactly, especially with like Gerard Butler scene, like a few scenes later, even when he's kind of addressing the town or the island, saying like giving even further backstory, saying like, yeah, we've been hunting dragons for like we've been in a war with them for centuries, and this is our way of life, and all of that. It's like, Okay, yeah, we kind of already got that. Like, pick one or the other. So
yeah. And yeah, so that's where I would be a little bit critical is it's easy to lose when you're remaking a movie like this. It's easy to just be like, yeah, we're just going to do it the way we did it before.
Yeah.
We'll just throw some actors in there, a little green screen, a little practical stuff here and there, whatever. Do some makeup and I think if they had put a little more effort into letting it stand apart a little bit, I think it could have been, a little bit better. Would have been it would have made for a better experience overall, especially when you're talking about like making it a companion to the animated version. It would be nice to have a couple of things that make it a little bit different. Now Gerard Butler, on the other hand, it was very fun to see him playing this character in live action that he lent the voice to in the original. Like that was kind of neat and interesting. And I believe he's the only person who came back. Am I right about that?
That sounds right.
Let's go to. I'm looking at the original because So I've got both IMDb's pulled up. Yeah, Jay Baruchel, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, Craig Ferguson played Gobber. Which Nick Frost plays him in this version. Jonah Hill, of course. T.J. Miller. Kristen Wiig, which is funny, like all these people like 15 years ago. It's like Kristen Wiig, wild. Like how big a star is she today? Right. David Tennant was a voice for Spitelout in this. That's pretty funny.
Huh.
But these are I think he's really the only major cast member who
I think returned. So too.
Which we should point out, it is worth mentioning that the Dean DeBlois, I don't know how to pronounce. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He is the writer and director of the original film as well.
Right.
So he's a co-director. He and Chris Sanders directed the animated version. William Davies and Dean DeBlois. Sorry, I'm going to say it wrong. And Chris Sanders. I don't know why I can't get that. They were the writers, and they basically just, I think, stepped aside, and he just took, of course, Cressida Cowell, who was the author of the book series, I think.
Yeah.
So that's funny that the major behind the camera players are almost the same, and then there's only one person from the cast returning, which is Gerard Butler's Stoic as the Hiccup's father and the leader of the village. He was a little more annoying in this, I think, than
I think so too.
There were just a couple of moments that came across as just particularly pig-headed in almost the wrong way. Now again, this is the kind of the point of the movie, right? This is the other part of the movie is Hiccup changing society to fit him rather than fitting, changing himself to fit society. And his father is the toughest guy in the village, and he's the leader, and he charges in head first and wants to kill as many dragons as he can. And here's little Hiccup trying to convince him that peace is a better way. And it was just particularly frustrating in a way that, as both as a parent and as just the movie viewer, that he couldn't, they had to drag out that conflict a little more.
Yeah.
And it's, and again, that's partly my own bias, because that's like a major thing for me is like, listen to your children. And it's like, parents, listen to your children.
Yeah.
And let them be who they are. And, of course, that's the big lesson of this film, is in the series in general, is your kids have something great to do. Your job is to guide them, but not to make them like you. So stop it. And that was just sort of frustrating for me that, even as Hiccup becomes more emboldened, he still is just unable to reach him, and it feels almost contrived in some instances, like it's you know, here's a guy who's maybe not a great father, but he still loves his son, and that's pretty obvious. But he is real quick to be like, "You're not my son," and you know, like, I'm so embarrassed of you, and it's like, I don't know. This is like doesn't seem real true to what the character should be. It's at some point of the film. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. We can talk a little bit more about that relationship and spoilers, but it did feel a little bit a little contrived, like you said. Especially with the kind of way that we can talk about in spoilers. We'll talk about spoilers. Do you want to go into spoilers? Actually,
I think. I mean, we can.
Okay.
I mean, this is again is one of those things where it's like, listen, this is not, you know, like too terribly different from if you've seen the original. This is not really spoiling anything.
Yeah, exactly.
but you know, but it's still you know, maybe you haven't seen it. Maybe you're you know, maybe you're a 9-year-old kid listening to this podcast and haven't watched this movie before.
Yes, and if you are, I will just say eat your vegetables. And
do your homework.
Do your homework, and
don't play in the street.
Yeah, don't play in the street. Take your parents' like credit cards. Go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer.
No, don't ask your parents first. Get your parents' permission, and if they say no, then you know, I don't know. I'm not saying don't listen to your parents.
Well, no, I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying that
we just need money.
Yeah, it's better to ask for forgiveness than beg for forgiveness than ask for permission, or
true.
Yeah,
that is true. We're gonna give you all the this should be like, we should do this podcast like you know, like lessons for kids, like real lessons for kids.
Yes.
But yeah, also like screen time. Limit your screen time a little bit.
Yes.
You'll be happier, I promise.
Exactly. But speaking of being happier, I don't know. Let's go into spoilers for How to Train Your Dragon. But before we do that, Joe, 2 questions for you. One, what did you rate this on Letterboxd out of 5?
Yeah.
And the second question is, do you want to see them make How to Train Your Dragon 2 and How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, I think? Would you want to see live action versions of those?
I'm going to tell you the truth. I did not rate it on Letterboxd. I did not give it a star rating. I would give it a 3.5.
Nice.
So if you do go to my Letterboxd and see that I didn't, 3.5 is kind of what I want to call it. Mm-hmm. Maybe 3.75. We can say that even, like it was very enjoyable. It was, I hate to say derivative because it's a remake, but it did some of the things it needed to do to make itself stand out, I guess, as they say, to justify its existence. You know, why am I watching this and not the animated version?
Right.
There are a couple of reasons to do that, as you know, that we've outlined. But there are other times when they sort of didn't really get there. So that's kind of my overall rating on it. What was the other question?
Nice. And the other question is, do you want to see the other 2 How to Train Your Dragons adapted?
Yes, but I would like them to do something a little bit different. I would like them to kind of deviate a little bit more. Even if, you know, if they want to tell the same stories, okay, but just give us something a little bit extra. If you're going to do it again. And maybe on the third one, which I don't even know if I saw the third one. I don't remember but either way, for the third one, do something completely different. Just make a new story.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's enough material there. There's enough, you know, there are enough areas, enough ways to go that you could do something really different and do something really interesting and fun. And I kind of would hope they would do that. If they're going to do a part 2 and or a part 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Excuse me. I definitely hear you there. For me, I am going to have rated this 3 stars on Letterboxd. Very solid movie. Again, just like the justifying itself, in this conversation that we've had, I feel like I'm coming away from it with a little bit more of, I guess, more respect for the movie. Not that I didn't have any, like, a lot of respect for it. I just feel like that the movie, like, in talking it out, has gotten a bit clearer in my brain for it. And I'm trying to look to see if you have watched The Hidden World.
I don't even know if I would have logged it.
Oh, interesting.
When did the third one come out?
That was 2019.
Oh yeah, then I should have. Yeah, I should have logged it. If I kind of suspect I didn't watch the third one.
Okay.
I liked the first one very much, and I kind of felt like the second one was, if I remember the way I felt about it, I have only seen it once, and I was kind of a little more meh on the second one. And then I probably skipped the third one, but I am starting over with school age children, so and they certainly loved this film. So
nice.
We do have plans to watch the first one, and maybe we just go through all three. And even the series, there was a TV series too, right? I think it was Riders of Burke was what it was called.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was a brief animated series.
Oh yeah, interesting.
And I'll look it up too.
Yeah, that's on Peacock.
It was called Riders of Burke.
Yeah, Riders of Burke.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. Ran for 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I was aware of it, but I never really watched it. But maybe I think it maybe only got a season. But there's some material out there for fans of this as a franchise. So and some of those animated series based on kind of a hit movie, they're a little hit or miss. So and maybe that was the same way. But Dragons Riders of Burke is what it's called.
Yes. So okay.
You have to shorten that title a little bit.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would be into seeing, definitely, I would definitely be into seeing more of, more live action, movies. There's a lot of stuff, apparently. Just kind of looking, but yeah, I would be interested in seeing more. Yeah, we'll talk a bit more in spoilers, but overall, I thought this was fine. It didn't rub me the wrong way like other live action adaptations have been doing. Or live action.
By the way, there are 12 books by the looks of it.
Oh wow!
So I'm unfamiliar with the books completely.
Same.
But just looking it up, there are 12. They look like novel length.
Oh wow!
Books. I mean, maybe they're graphic. I don't know. I'm sorry. I apologize for not having that for not knowing that. But
sure.
12. Yeah, Cressida Cowell authored 12 full novels. So there seems to be plenty of source material to come after. By the way, Hiccup's name is Hiccup Horrendous Haddock III.
I saw that. Very good.
I'm glad that they honestly, like, I do find, this is a kid a kid focused series of books, but it is sort of a the one of the things that I find annoying about Harry Potter, among other things, is the naming conventions that they have for names. And it's just kind of like, oh, well, this just sounds funny to say it. Let's make this their name, and it's like stuff like that. Because, it's like Snotlout and, Snorger. And I'm like, I don't know. Do these feel like real names?
Right.
Hiccup is like a silly, like, who names their kids Hiccup? Like that. Yeah. I don't have much respect for Stoic because they are Vikings. It's like, why couldn't he have a good Viking name? Why does it have to be Hiccup? It's like, well, it's cute for kids. Okay, fine.
Sure.
But, it kind of pulls me out. It harms the imagination part of things for me when they get little details like that. They do little things like that. That's kind of a peeve that I have about things.
That's fair.
But yeah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and go into spoilers for How to Train Your Dragon. So I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. When we come back, we're going to be spoiling How to Train Your Dragon. And if you want to skip the spoiler section, check the show notes for timestamps. I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. When we come back, we're spoiling How to Train Your Dragon.
It's time, Echo.
I'll have to kill you. I will, because I'm a Viking. You hear that? I'm a Viking! It's okay. I won't hurt you.
All right, spoilers on for How to Train Your Dragon. I did not realize that was like not a very it was kind of a boring clip for the trailer. And pretty long. So anyway, spoilers on for How to Train Your Dragon. Joe, let's talk about the kind of finale, I guess, the climax of the movie with the big giant thing, the hive mind thing. How did you feel about that and the way it was rendered and the way that it was showcased in the movie?
It was fine. Everybody dies. No, nobody dies. I don't know. It was fine. It again, to my recollection of the original, it was more or less the same.
Mm-hmm.
It was, the giant dragon comes out, and you kind of find out that most of the dragons are pretty benevolent, and they are sort of enslaved to this huge dragon that makes them all feed it sort of in perpetuity. And that, it almost is, for me, is falling victim to like the kind of the paradox of Godzilla, or like giant monsters, or the Meg, where it's like, if this thing exists in the world, like, how does it really exist? Like, what does it eat? How does it possibly eat enough to survive? I mean, and where, and to be like this fearsome, formidable murderer, obviously, like, blue whales exist and they're enormous, but they're also docile creatures that eat plankton, like, it's like that makes sense from a nature point of view, but it doesn't make much sense that a giant dragon would exist that would, eat people in some way. Like, it would have to eat so many people that it would be too difficult to eat enough people to survive in a real way. Or, whatever else it eat. Like, certainly, like, the sheep that it had been eating, that was like the big thing of the film, right? Is that in lieu of murdering people, they steal all of their sheep. And because they're presumably eating them. Like, in a regular sized big dragon, that's that would be tough enough, but for that one that's like the super size, like, it literally is almost like a Godzilla sized dragon. And it's just like, how even with a society of dragons there feeding it just doesn't seem like it would be enough to keep that fat and sustained for that, so that's kind of where those kinds of things fall apart for me. And if you want to attack me as being like, oh, well, like, this is just a good story, it's like, yeah, but a good story has to have a good solid base and
good interior logic.
I will believe that that Superman can fly, but I can't believe that Superman shoots lasers out of his fingers, because he doesn't shoot lasers out of his fingers. And then I also couldn't buy that, if you shoot Superman, it doesn't hurt him, and that you could punch him in the face and hurt him, being a non-super powered being, like, if someone walked up who wasn't super powered and punched Superman in the face and hurt him, I would be like, that doesn't make sense. Like, this is the internal logic is now out the window.
I need to see Superman eating as many people as possible to sustain his his existence.
I would watch that. As a matter of fact, I do watch that. It's called The Boys.
Oh, fair.
Check out The Boys if you're an adult. I haven't watched that. And will blow your mind in so many different ways. But you know what I'm saying? Like, internal logic has to work. If there's a way that would work, cool, but you got to, like, tell me how.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of maybe the weakness of the story. But the rest of that story is just so good that I really just don't care. In the end, it's like, oh, okay, I'll deduct a half star because that's kind of dumb.
Sure.
But I would have loved to have seen like the bad guy be a little bit different than that. But there's so much going on in this film anyway, and there's so many different lessons that it's really secondary. The real bad guy is stoic in a way. He's the real antagonist of this film, as far as I'm concerned. But he's almost like the dad in Footloose. This is really Footloose now that I think about it. This movie is really Footloose with Viking hats.
Sure.
If Kevin Bacon and John Lithgow were wearing Viking hats, number one, Footloose would have been a little bit better movie, and it would have just been How to Train Your Dragon, if you throw a dragon in it. But that's that's essentially the story, and they tell it very well. So I don't care about the dumb giant dragon and the volcano thing, because who cares? The rest of it is so thrilling and fun that I don't care.
Yeah, I had kind of forgotten about that aspect from the original movie. Like I forgot where it was all leading, and I thought it was done well in terms of just creating the scale of it and the danger of the kids riding dragons and doing that. Like I kind of feel like that's kind of where I was getting at with my criticism of it, being like, I kind of wish it was a little bit more about their training and their growth and everything, because we get a lot. There's a lot in this movie, but I feel like there are points in the movie that feel like it's just not developed quite enough. Like I don't need it to be like a deep, like Harry Potter level, like these are the kids at Dragon Camp or whatever, which I think that's what Fourth Wing is. I'm not sure the books, but it's like I kind of needed something a little bit more. Like I feel like Astrid wanting to be the chief and being kind of pushed aside by Hiccup through no fault of his own, like that kind of dynamic I feel like should have been fleshed out a little bit more. And then my biggest one was I think it's pronounced Stoic. Yeah. But he, like, the whole thing with him wanting to, like, his drive for wanting to kill dragons, being his wife died or what have you. I kind of wish that was like played up more. I kind of wish that was a little bit more, prevalent in the movie, because it kind of felt like this is just like an extra reason to why he's desperate to find the hive, and not like it's more of a reason for him to go out into danger to find the hive, rather than being the driving force for why he wants to find the hive. And
I think that's very valid, and really that's where they could have expanded, because Astrid gives it up pretty quick. She gives that dream up of hers like pretty quick after she of course learns about Toothless, and she is of that group, and she reverses course pretty fast. Basically gives up her dream of being the chief herself, in support of Toothless. And like she basically torpedoes her entire life. That's the course she's been on her since she was a baby, was I'm going to be the chief and I'm going to kill every dragon there is. And, she gets, she goes on a ride. She goes for a ride on the dragon. It's like, oh yeah, I don't want to kill dragons anymore. This is cool. Which it is, but it would have been nice to have a few more character moments, and also their love story, so to speak. It goes kind of 180s. It goes from like she hates him to, oh yeah, I kind of love him. And it's like, I mean, maybe you should get to know each other a little bit better. And we don't have enough scenes of that.
Right.
And the same with the father-son relationship, because it's very much like, no, you're going to kill dragons, kid. And, it almost felt a little more cruel too, when they did capture Toothless and they're using him as a weapon, and Hiccup's just kind of like, goes from fiercely, like, Toothless was ready to die. Like, he jumped in at the, there's a point in that film where he jumps in to save his life, and he, is captured, and Hiccup is essentially like, well, I tried. I guess they're going to kill him.
Right.
And it's just like, it seems sort of callous. It was like, you could have done a little bit more than that. Like, you could have a little more than a single scene with your dad, like, arguing with him, and he's just like, shut up, kid. And he's like, okay. It's like, yeah, sorry, Dad. And I'm like, he was kind of starting to break out and assert himself, and then just very quickly back down. I was like, well, okay, if you want to exploit this dragon that has saved my life and changed my entire life and convinced me of this, like, this creature is my best friend, and I'm just gonna shrug my shoulders when you yell at me one time. It felt a little bit hollow, and again, in service of the plot and the story, and not the characters, which is kind of what I feel like it should do. He should have been growing, and by the time he got to the point, been enough to like stand, like, he's laying down behind the ship, so to speak. Like, when they're like, he's laying down in front of the tank and like, run over me if you're gonna, but I'm gonna, like, this is my friend. And he didn't really show as much loyalty as he could have. And it's, again, just so they can move the plot along. And I just wish they had just fine-tuned that a little bit.
That's really interesting, because if I'm thinking of the same moment, I feel like that was also kind of playing at Hiccup's kind of not confusion, but his division within himself of, like, he wants his father's approval. He wants to be, he wants to be what his father wants him to be. But now, like you said, his entire life and worldview has changed because of Toothless. Like, I feel like could have been a better way for them to kind of explore that, but also I feel like it's kind of contingent with his, like, inner conflict of whether or not he will finally get the approval of his father, or, like, at the expense of his best friend, his safety and exploitation and everything, or should he stand up and, like, really, fight for what he knows is right. So I think there's stuff there, but I agree. It probably could have been fleshed out a bit more. And also it also, I mean, and again, this is part of the point of the story, is that Hiccup is more cerebral than the lunkhead Vikings who want to just go smash everything. And he is learning strategy, and by observing, and he's essentially, I guess, using science, right, like the powers of observation, to not defeat the dragon so much as he's neutralizing them as a threat, right? Like, he gaining an understanding.
He learns their ticklish spot, right? He learns how to, like, anticipate certain things that he can then, like, shut them down, in essence, like, not hurt them. And that he didn't come at them with that as a presentation, and also that they didn't see that in the 18 times he did it through the middle part of the movie. Or they're not like, hey, how did you, like, make that dragon suddenly stop and you, like, shifted it back? Like, they didn't understand anything beyond, like, winner and loser. And and again, that's another thing that they could have at the script level gone through and made this an even richer movie than than it was.
Absolutely.
But I mean, that it kind of defies logic a little bit in that sense, where it's like, it kind of makes sense to me, right? If you're watching and you've been spending your whole life watching your people essentially die, or getting their hands and feet bitten off or burned off or whatever, dying horrible deaths or losing appendages, it seems like if someone could just walk up and do the like touch a dragon somewhere and make it lay down and giggle and roll around like a kitten, like, why wouldn't we just do that? Why are we, even if we want to kill them, why wouldn't we just do that and then kill them?
Right.
It's like, come on. It's like, learn something a little bit. Instead, they're just like, pick up that hammer and bash the thing, and it's like, I don't know. It seems like we could do a little more.
Yeah, I think the sad fact is that seems pretty authentic to reality.
Well, that is, you are
yeah.
right. Yeah, maybe I'm being a little too optimistic about our own
Sure.
intelligence.
Sure. Just like generations of one way doing something and then like some kid doing something different. Like, I mean, it's a tried and true formula of a story, but I can understand why they wouldn't think like, oh, hey, you know, they're afraid of eels. Why don't we use that? Like, no, I think it's just like, I don't know. Yeah.
It just seems like we would be able to, they would have been able to come up with something, but yes.
Yeah.
And it did. And again, in this live action version, more modern politics kind of came into play. And I alluded to that in my review.
Yeah.
That it, you know, there's a bit of, and I don't want to make light of it, but it kind of, there's certainly some echoes of Israelis versus Palestinians, you know, kind of stuff. If you look at it on that level of, you know, this is like the never ending war that we fight because, you know, to gain revenge. But like in reality, it's sort of like we've lost sight of the reason we're really fighting. And we're, you know, like our fighting is now just because like, this is what we do. It's just our identity as we fight. And that is absolutely the identity of the Vikings in this movie, is just like, we fight and kill these things because they're our enemy. And why are they our enemy? I don't know. Because they like still steal our stuff. And it's like, you know, it's like, could we have peace? It's like, no, of course not. Because, you know, well, you know, it's sort of that kind of, there are sort of those kind of echoes that, you know, that kind of carry through this film now that were probably there in the original, but you know, it didn't. It also, I guess, with it being in the news currently, is something that's a little more, you know, top of mind. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's like hints of like colonialism too, with like them being on Dragon's Land and all that. Yeah,
and
a lot of stuff
you know,
there.
and you know, and conservatism versus liberalism, with you know, certainly to a degree between, you know, Hiccup and Stoic, with those arguments, the society being conservative versus this individual who has other ideas, and you know, no one wants to listen to them. This is again an age-old tale that this story just tells pretty well.
Yeah, a lot of like conservatism and liberalism, like, you know, one person who isn't thinking about anything and the other person is actually thinking about things. Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yes. The same, or they're thinking about something else.
Yeah.
But telling everybody they're thinking about this other thing.
Exactly. Ugh.
It's really sort of a distraction.
Yeah. But one of my favorite things about just the story overall, and we touched on it pretty heavily in the non-spoiler section, but I just want to kind of talk about it openly here, is that the way that like the movie ends with Hiccup having lost a leg, and like there's something beautiful and poetic to that, in that it further enriches his relationship with Toothless, because they're both creatures who have suffered, you know, what would conventionally be seen as like a life-changing, you know, I guess debilitating loss. But through Hiccup, Toothless is able to fly with the kind of I guess prosthetic wing, and Hiccup is, you know, able, because he's a Viking and lives in that society, like he's able to still function without a leg. I just like that kind of that cohesion between the two, both in the original and this one.
Yeah, and that's taking kind of the convention, societal conventions of the Vikings, and adapting it to create that symbiotic relationship between between Hiccup and Toothless. And it's it really struck me again a little bit differently here, that, you know, he wakes up And this is not like he created, he had already adapted the saddle and as you said, the prosthetic wing, and it was the movie in essence is him like perfecting the design, right? And that last piece is him getting that quote unquote battle scar that is, losing a foot and then the Vikings themselves make that prosthetic leg for Hiccup that he then uses as like the final connecting piece to that, to the rig of, the saddle and all of that, and really strengthens their connection. And that's kind of how it really comes through in that's really the coolest part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Is that the Viking society then goes that next level, that next step beyond even what he did. But it also makes the lead up to it all that more, all the more frustrating that,
sure,
that they are not listening. It's like, listen, we have all of these tools here.
Yeah.
Like we are so good at creating prosthetics for, for our injured people, and, making their disabilities a positive in their life. Like, beyond like you can function, it's like, this is almost a betterment for you in the end.
Yeah.
And it's so mystifying and frustrating that they have that. And this is like permeates their society. But then because of the story, they're like, no, it's like, you can't do that. And that's how I go just a little bit astray on this.
Sure.
It sort of just, I guess I could say it keeps it from being just an absolute classic for me. Like it's again, like little quarter to half star deductions here and there for stuff like that. As opposed to me just being like, this movie is garbage. Like, it's not, it's good. It's good.
Right.
It's, it's just not quite as great as it could be if they'd made a couple of edits here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anything else we can talk about in spoilers, or should we kind of wind down?
Yeah, I think we've covered most of it.
I think so too. I will.
We haven't covered anything to this point. Like, ask us questions, I guess.
Exactly. I will say one of the defining qualities of the original movie is present here, and that's the score. Like, there's the moment where he's flying, I think for the first time, and that music swells, and like that piece of score is just so beautiful. And I'm glad that it's a 1-to-1 thing with this. Like, they know what works well in the animated movie, so they just transferred it over there, and I did not mind at all, because it's just so like powerful in terms of the music of the scene. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, and those scenes. I haven't really talked about. I guess I could mention this before we go. Is that this is another criticism, is that that sequence was so just beautiful, and the score certainly factors into to the success of that scene, and it being as wonderful and timeless as it is. But later on, once the other characters start flying on their own dragons, it feels a little more mundane and routine, and it kind of loses just a little bit of the magic of that scene. As they go along, it's not like that kind of should have been sort of an Avengers Endgame moment where everyone, and all of the other heroes are returning, where it's like, Toothless or Hiccup and Toothless or Captain America, like making the final stand, and they all show up, but instead it's like, we have dragons, and it's like, let's make a couple of the dumb jokes of the the dumb twins and whatever, and it's like, we're doing it too, and it's just like, well, okay. Instead of being like that in-game on your left moment, it's just kind of like, oh, now there's more people riding dragons, and then it's like, now we're all riding dragons. But of course,
it seems so intuitive of them too, like that. I wish that there was something like a gap between that, where like they had to like learn how to do it. And they don't really talk about how long Hiccup was down after his injury, because he's, and I don't know, he's unconscious, he's in a coma, I don't know, when he loses his leg, but he wakes up, and everyone in the society, they're all flying dragons. They all have their own dragon now. And it's kind of like, man, how long was he down? Like, that would have had to have been months for everyone in the place to get their own. And
learn how to ride them. It feels like it's the thing in the world when it took Hiccup basically the entire film to really get it down.
And like, and not to nitpick too much, but like, and this is a pun, but it's also there's truth to it. But like him being down and like out of commission with the injury and stuff, like he's literally the only one who has trained a dragon. Like he can't impart like how to train a dragon while he's unconscious.
And even if Astrid had been, who was the other person who had done it to that point, or had been around him, even if she was teaching everyone, it still feels like it would have taken some more time. But we are getting a little nitpicky in this, but this is what we do.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Sorry.
And like to in the movie's defense also, like them not being controlled by a hive mind and everything, and like that would mean the dragons would be more amenable to training and domestication. So if
we wanted to extend this conversation, we could talk about how the Vikings then just like basically killed that giant dragon so that they could themselves enslave the dragons.
Right.
But I think we've been a little nitpicky as it is.
We've gotten in the
we don't
weeds
want to
here.
get too out of there. But next week we'll do alternative takes on these sorts of things on these films.
We will we'll have a whole dissertation ready to go when How to Train Your Dragon 2 comes out. But I think that can kind of wind down this review. Joe is not going to be joining me for the secondary review, but Joe, before we say goodbye to you, I just want to say thank you once again for joining me, and for making your first appearance of the year on the podcast. I
feel bad that it's taken this. We're halfway through the year almost.
I know.
Hadn't even been on. I was planning on having been on about 10 times before this, but
it's all good.
I will certainly be a little more vocal, like and Matt and I communicate with each other literally every day. I think we're certainly just in the same group chat, talking every day. So I certainly have opportunities. I have just I think there's just been a series of timings where I've just missed stuff. And as a matter of fact, I even had this feeling at one point where I was just like, why hasn't he had me on? Like, what's wrong with him? And then I'm like, well, he did say at the beginning of the year, like, anytime you want, here's my calendar.
Right.
Anytime you want to jump in, let me know. And I have not done that. So it's kind of on me. But, it took me a minute to get to that point. But, I will. I got lucky with this one because I saw your message of, hey, anyone want to join me? And I would have loved to have come on with Sam or Sam Watermeyer or Nick Rogers was on. Was he on with you?
Yeah, well, back in January.
Okay, see, that's how connected I've been with this particular aspect of our discussion. So
I feel like he was
there.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I've ever even podcasted with Nick before.
Oh, really? Interesting.
That is, I may have. We'll have to ask him.
Yeah.
But I don't even know that. I don't know that he podcasts regularly. But I don't know that I have.
Interesting.
Maybe once or twice. But we've known each other for 2025. almost 15 years. We're closing in on 15 years of knowing.
Not How I Met Your Dragon, but How to Train Your Dragon cycle of like animation to live action. You've known Nick.
Yeah, really. I want to say it was around like 2010, 2011. Sad to think that's 15 years ago, but anyway, I've been friends with people a long time, and people who do these, who I consider colleagues and friends, and I have been on different media with most of them. But we'll have to ask Nick at some point. That doesn't help you guys listening because you'll never know unless we Next week we'll come back and be like, by the way, Joe and Nick were on a podcast together in 2014, or I don't know, I couldn't even think of a 2014 movie off the top of my head now. But
if we figure out that you guys were on a podcast together in the interim between this recording and this posting, I will put a link to that in the show notes if I remember. Yeah, but Joe, thank you once again for joining me. Could you tell people where they can find you online and
listen, jump on the social medias, the old person social medias. Don't get on the TikToks. My daughter is in the other room now, but she loves when I say things like I'm getting on the TikToks.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm on Letterboxd, as you said already, Joe R. Shearer, almost said .com. Yeah, you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn, or I don't know. I'm not on X anymore because I don't like that. But yeah, I'm on Instagram. Technically speaking, just find me on Letterboxd or Facebook.
There you go.
Listen, if you want to talk to me bad enough, that's what you'll do. And of course, MidwestFilmJournal.com. I would love to interact with people on there. On our various social channels, and who knows what the future holds as far as other places.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, links to all of Joe's stuff is in the show notes of the episode. Of course, we're going to bid adieu to Joe Shearer, and stay tuned because I'll go into the secondary review of Echo Valley. So stay tuned for that. Before we get to our secondary review, I want to take a quick moment to remind you that if you like the show, please take a moment to follow us on social media and subscribe to and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or whatever your preferred podcast app is. And don't forget to subscribe to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast YouTube channel as well, where I'm posting more videos and live streams of podcasts occasionally. And if you're interested in starting a podcast of your own, you can go to Libsyn and use the promo code OBSESS when you sign up for a new account. You'll get up to 2 months free, depending on when you sign up, and we'll get a commission on it as well. More details on that in the show notes of this episode. And now back to the show.
They tell me I view obsessively.
I need help. Okay, let's get this off. Are you bleeding? Okay, calm down. Breathe. You need to be completely honest with me. What happened?
I was with my boyfriend when we started arguing.
Is he okay? But it was an accident.
No.
It was he.
I hit him with a rock.
Did anyone see?
All right, and for this week's secondary review, I'm going to share my non-spoiler thoughts on Echo Valley, which is a new film directed by Michael Pierce, written by Brad Inglesby, and it premiered on Apple TV Plus on June 13th. The premise, according to IMDb, is Kate is dealing with a personal tragedy while owning and training horses in Echo Valley, an isolated and picturesque place, when her daughter Claire arrives at her doorstep, frightened, trembling, and covered in someone else's blood. The cast includes Julianne Moore, Sydney Sweeney, Donald Gleason, Fiona Shaw, Edmund Donovan, Albert Jones, and Kyle MacLachlan. So once again, this is streaming on Apple TV Plus. And I'll get right out in front of it and say I rated this 2 stars. I did not like this movie. It's kind of a shame because it has the earmarks of a pretty solid mother-daughter drama, especially like troubled youth and grief-stricken mother kind of dynamic. So Julianne Moore plays Kate, who is dealing with grief over the loss of her wife from about 9 months prior to the story taking place. And her daughter, Claire, is very much troubled. She is into drugs and has a very fraught relationship with her boyfriend, who is also mixed up with some pretty shady characters. And that's kind of the jumping off point of the movie, because once the shady characters kind of come into the picture, because her boyfriend, Claire's boyfriend, gets mixed up with them, it becomes this thriller about like the lengths that Kate will go to not even necessarily protect her daughter, but just do things for her daughter. And that's kind of the main focus of the movie, is that Julianne Moore's character is so focused on just doing things for her daughter that it is to the detriment of both of their happiness and livelihoods and their life. And that on paper is a pretty solid premise and a pretty solid themes to explore, but the movie just doesn't connect it that well, for a variety of reasons. First of all, being that it doesn't really set up too much about their relationship aside from just telling us about the relationship. So there's a scene early on where Julianne Moore visits Kyle MacLachlan, who plays her ex-husband and the father of Claire, and she's basically asking for money to repair the roof of the barn, and he admonishes her for always doing things for Claire and like giving money to Claire and everything. And there's this just like the way that it's written and the way that it's performed, it's just this outburst kind of almost from nowhere, but it just feels like it's just a vessel to get that idea out to the audience that yes, she will do anything for her daughter, but not necessarily in the selfless way, but more in the like I'm helpless to help my daughter, so I'm going to give her what she wants, even if I know that it's, something that she doesn't need or something that could adversely affect her, because I'm just someone who is going to be in a position to help my daughter in the short term rather than give any tough love or motherly guidance. And again, those are some very interesting and compelling themes for a drama, but once it switches over to a thriller where Julianne Moore is basically being threatened by the shady characters of Claire's boyfriend's life, namely the main guy being this guy named Jackie, played by Donald Gleason, which I'll talk about in a bit, but once it goes into that, it just kind of falters as a thriller. It's not that thrilling or interesting. And partially that's because of Donald Gleason, who I love him as an actor. I think he is incredible. I think he's a fantastic actor. Like one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years, or 11 years, I guess at this point, is Ex Machina. And I think Donald Gleason does a phenomenal job in that movie. He's a great actor. Here, I think he is horribly miscast, and the character is terribly underwritten, and it causes a problem because he is the linchpin of the threat of the tension of the movie, because he plays like this drug dealer heavy who is basically trying to squeeze out money from Julianne Moore, because Sydney Sweeney did something that lost him like half a kilo of drugs. And because of that, that's like what ramps up the tension in terms of like, okay, now Julianne Moore is mixed up in this whole situation with this drug dealer guy, and tension is supposed to be tensioning, but instead it just kind of, it feels very rote. It feels very kind of cliched. And what the biggest shame of the movie is that beforehand, when this movie was a mother-daughter drama about a mother trying to not even do right by her daughter, but trying to help her troubled daughter in her own way, that's not necessarily helpful, but it's just kind of providing for her in a variety of ways. That is where the movie is incredibly compelling. And that's because Sydney Sweeney gives a really good performance early on in the movie. There's one scene in particular where where Claire comes back to the house and she is pleading with her mother to give her money. And it's clear that she's going to be getting back into drugs, or she has already gotten into drugs, and Kate does not want to give her money. She made a vow to her ex-husband that she isn't going to give money. So that creates that turns into this big blowout of an argument that turns into just it escalates so well throughout the entire scene. It's thrilling, it's horrifying, it's heartbreaking for a variety of reasons. It is a really, really great scene. It no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is a great scene, performed very well by Julianne Moore and Sydney Sweeney. The problem is the movie just kind of, that feels like this isolated thing in the movie, not necessarily in terms of the story, because Claire is still there and Claire is still that's still a part of the storyline, is Kate wanting to do things for Claire, even if it's not for the best for Claire, or even the best for Kate. But the movie just doesn't really connect those ideas or those themes in a very clean and clear way. And that's the biggest bummer, because that one scene is phenomenal, and it just kind of feels like the movie kind of switches over to autopilot, because it becomes this rote, cliched story, thriller that just doesn't really do much. And that's because Domhnall Gleeson's character is not that intimidating. It seems like the movie just didn't really want to push that character far, in terms of being intimidating. Like, it didn't want to do anything to demonstrate any kind of intimidation stuff, aside from just some very cliched dialogue. And like, one thing that he does that's scary and frightening, but it just seems a little, it seems like the movie was playing it safe. It didn't want to go too gritty, too grimy, too horrific, in terms of his actions. But the downside of that is that it becomes this weird, like, he just seems like a kid. Like, he seems like he's a contemporary of Claire. He's in that age group with Claire and her boyfriend Ryan. And like, he just doesn't carry this like level of intimidation with him. Like, for instance, so back a couple of months ago, I reviewed on Patreon a movie called The Girl Is in Trouble. It was in February, because it was tied to Captain America, Brave New World. So The Girl Is in Trouble has, oh God, why can't I think of his name? Wilmer Valderrama as a drug dealer. And it was a companion review I did on Patreon, but that movie was just okay. But Wilmer Valderrama does this really great, like, intimidating performance. Like, he is kind of cliched, but he is this like intimidating drug dealer kind of persona. And it was such an interesting departure from what I've seen from him. And frankly, it was a better performance than the movie really warranted. The rest of the movie really warranted, but it stuck with me. It was very intense and intimidating. Here, Domhnall Gleeson is like the opposite of that, because he is playing that same type of character. He's playing that type of character that's this drug dealer who is underdeveloped. That's the big thing, is that everything seems to be underwritten and underdeveloped, because he's this drug dealer who just alludes to the fact that, like, okay, I lost these drugs, and now the people that I'm working for they want their money and they want their drugs. So, you need to do this for me. And it's just like, it's very vague. It's very much just like dependent on the audience, just knowing that this is the trope that the movie's going with, rather than creating like this house for us to live in the trope. It's like if the trope is a house, the movie doesn't do anything to decorate it to look unique. It looks like every other house that you've been in with this same trope. And that's a problem, because of that, the movie doesn't have any room to really explore that. It just kind of just expects you to be invested in it and interested in it, even though you've seen the same thing so many times, and it's not doing anything different. And by the time we get to the third act, which, by the way, leading up to the third act, Claire it's not that she disappears from the movie, but she's just like, it's like once the movie switches over to that thriller, race against time, like, you need to get my money or I'm going to kill you and your family sort of rote and cliched plotline. Once it gets to that, the Claire and Kate relationship, the mother-daughter relationship in the movie, takes a back seat, and it's always there because Kate's motivations throughout the rest of the movie are tied intricately with Claire and Claire's well-being, and that's the point of the movie, is that she does everything for Claire, even if it's harmful to Claire, because she just wants to do things for her daughter rather than impart, tough love and motherhood and mothering and parenting to her daughter, because she just wants to kind of not necessarily control the moodiness of Claire, but she just wants to make Claire happy. And if that means doing heinous things or potentially enabling a drug habit, like, that's where the conflict kind of came in the one great scene of this movie, because she wants to, like, her daughter is begging her for money and pleading with her that, no, we're just getting camping supplies, we're just getting food, it's just to lay low and everything, it's just to do this. And Kate knows that that's not the case, so she's resisting, but the way that she resists is this conflict of whether or not she should resist. Like, she wants to, like, it's communicated to the audience very clearly that she wants to give her the money. She wants to take care of Claire, but she is resistant to that because she knows the truth. She knows what that means. And that escalation of that in that scene is so well done, because it leads to Claire doing and threatening things that are heinous and horrible and out of character for this type of character, or the character that we infer that Kate knows as her daughter. And it's a really well done and well drawn arc in that scene, because it communicates to us that this is not her daughter, this is her drug habit, this is her addiction speaking and going off the rails in terms of in an effort to try to get something for her to enable her drug habit. So all of that's to say that in the third act, when Kate is faced with a dilemma to do something for Jackie, Donald Gleason's character, in order to get the heat off of Claire and get things away from Claire, that is always in the back of the mind of the viewer, that she's doing this for Claire. She's doing these things. She's making these concessions of moral judgment for Claire's benefit, because ultimately it's to help Claire. And the problem with that, and I'm being vague because I don't want to say exactly like what happens in the third act or anything, but once the third act like hits, once like the plan is in motion, because the movie is so underwritten and kind of riddled with cliche, we know exactly what the deal is. We know exactly what the quote unquote magic trick is in this third act. And the movie presents it in a way that's supposed to be mysterious. And it's supposed to be like this uncovering of like what really happened and how like the plot kind of circles back and fixates on itself and everything. And it's like, it's a foregone conclusion. It's something we already know from 10 minutes before, because the movie is so sloppily put together that, yeah, there's no other reason why this thing would happen if it wasn't for this end. And the movie just kind of expects us to think like, oh, this is what really happened, so that they can pull the rug out from underneath us. They can pull the rug out from underneath us by saying like, this is what really happened. But since the movie is underwritten, we're standing on like linoleum, and they're pulling a rug out in the next room, because we already know that there's a rug in that room. So hopefully that made sense. I think it did. It made sense in my brain. But anyway, yeah, this movie was not good. It was not good. It was a bummer. And like with Julianne Moore and Sydney Sweeney and Donald Gleason, those are three very talented actors, and I really wanted more out of them in this movie. And Kyle MacLachlan is also great too, but he's only in one scene, and that's a bummer, because I could always do with more of him in a movie. So I think that's basically all I can say in non-spoilers for Echo Valley. I'm not going to spoil it, so I'm going to kind of close down the episode, I guess. But it's not good. I rated it 2 stars. Your mileage may vary. I don't know. It's on Apple TV Plus. Check it out if you have a mind to, or not. to each their own. But that is my review of Echo Valley. Again, it is on Apple TV Plus, and I'm not going to do a potpourri section, but I do want to just say really quick, thank you once again to Joe Shearer for joining me for the How to Train Your Dragon review. Check out his work at MidwestFilmJournal.com, and also, of course, in the show notes of this episode, you'll find all of the links to his stuff around the internet. I'm going to close down this episode. I do want to say that if you want my thoughts on the life of Chuck, both my thoughts and Tiny's thoughts and Kim C's thoughts, check out Tower Junkies over at towerjunkiespod.com, where the three of us reviewed the life of Chuck. So check that out. If you aren't a Tower Junkie, go subscribe over there, listen to our review of the life of Chuck. So that means that this week you guys have gotten 3 reviews across 2 podcasts, and eventually I'll bring back Anthology. So anyway, that's it for this week's episode of the Obsessive Viewer podcast. I apologize for the lateness of it, but I appreciate your patience. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and make sure to follow the show on social media and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app. Also, check out Obsessive Viewer Podcast's other shows, the aforementioned Tower Junkies, a Stephen King podcast hosted by Tiny and myself, and Anthology, the Twilight Zone and classic sci-fi podcast hosted by me. So that'll do it for this episode. Next week on the show, I think I'm going to be reviewing Materialists and maybe Ballerina. We'll see. It could change. But until then, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. And now, enjoy this short clip from a recent Patreon-exclusive episode. For the full episode and more Patreon-exclusive content, sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Like that whole second act with the buskers and the dancing, that, first of all, let me just take a brief pause here and say that when I was watching that sequence, all I kept thinking was, Mike Flanagan is going to nail it when he gets to the Dark Tower Book 5, when he gets to the Dance the Kamala. Like, that's going to be great. Anyway, so watching that sequence. Thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. This episode was produced and edited by me, Matt Hurt. If you have feedback, thoughts on our episodes, or just want to connect, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. For more information on this show, including a full archive of our episodes and show notes, visit obsessiveviewer.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on social media and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. Also, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible to help increase our visibility and grow our community. If you want to support the show and get early access to new episodes, as well as a steady stream of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. For information on more podcasts presented by obsessiveviewer.com, visit obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. Our theme song is A Little Mad Sometimes by As Good As It Gets. For more of their music, check them out on Spotify and at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn. Check out the show notes for your promo code to get started podcasting today.